Hi and welcome. My name is Denise Farrell. I'm the founder of the Grant Sherpa. Our mission at the Grant Sherpa is to make it easy for Canadian business owners to find, apply, and close grant funding. We guide people up the mountain of money. Today, I'm sharing a session just to help people think about how they prepare the business plan and what matters for grant funders. You know, this is a gap that we see because we review all of our clients that we work with. We review their business plan and give them feedback to share with them how they can up their value, because it is critical how your information shows up in your business plan as it relates to all the applications that you're going to apply for grant funding for. And so there are key elements that we know that stand out that really have an impact, and we want to share with you what those are as you're planning on preparing your business plan for grant funders. The key areas that we want you to think about including executive summary, company overview, market analysis, products and services, whether you're offering them now or you plan to offer them, your marketing plan, who your customer is, that you understand who they are and where you can find them, research you may have done related to them, your logistics, if that applies to your business, if there's suppliers, facilities, parts you need to get, and where you're going to get them and access them, financial plan, that includes your income statement, balance sheet, cash flow, even if you don't have money, and coming in, and then projections and how you're going to grow, and then the impact that you have from an economic, environmental, or diversity perspective. And then we suggest people would also add in sections based on the funder that they're reaching out to. So for example, if you're doing an R&D grant, or you're looking at R&D funding, you may add a couple sections related to R&D and your intellectual property, because that's quite relevant to the grant funding that you're going after. One of the things that I want people to start thinking about when they're applying for funding from the government is see the funders as investors. Most funders that represent the government are using taxpayers' dollars. So they are risk averse. And so the more information that you can provide to help de-risk their investment, the better. They may be looking for different things depending on the funding that you're going after. And so you may need to adapt your business plan depending on the fund that you're applying for. And critical to all grant funding is, in Canada, you have to show that you're a majority owned Canadian company, and you want to make it clear for companies in how you share your information in your business plan. It's just like an extra check mark that people are looking for. And the more you can make it easy for people to find that information, the better it is. And again, just keep in mind, I've seen this happen a few times, is people want to use their pitch deck as a business plan, and it's not detailed enough. Pitch decks are great when you're pitching live and you're talking to grant funders, but for the most part, when you're applying to grant funding, you don't have a chance to, when you submit a grant to be reviewed, you're not having a conversation with them about your business. It's just what's on paper. And so a pitch deck doesn't suffice or replace what a business plan does. Now I'm going to talk about some of the key things. You know, there's all kinds of things you want to include in your business plan, but a couple of things that I want you to highlight and pay attention to when you're preparing them for grant funding. The biggest one is make sure that when you're preparing your business plan, that they understand what the problem is that you're solving. They really want to know that, is there a problem in the market? What research have you done to identify that program? What is unique about what you're doing that no one else is doing? Real clear articulation of that problem. The next thing that's really important is, how do you understand your customer? So when grant funders are looking at your business, they want to know, number one, do you know them? Have you done customer research? Do you have expertise and have lived in this industry for 20 years? Give them as much information about how you arrived at understanding that there's an actual customer who could buy what you have. And if there's any data that you have to support or any background statistics, that's really critical. The other thing is, where do you find your customers? You know, how do you plan to find your customers if you were to move forward? Understand as well that when they're looking at this business, two things they're going to be looking for is, number one, the size of your customer market. So for example, If you say we have an innovation that's going to solve a problem for every homeowner across Canada, they're going to say, that's great. How many people on your team do you have to be able to action that? And if you have 3 people on your team, is that realistic? So you may want to start explaining how you're, here's our overall market, our primary market, and then how you want to narrow it down to a smaller market that you can reach. And then the other thing they're thinking about when you're discussing the customers that you want to reach, how are you going to market to them? What's the budget you have? So if you're a startup, what is your budget to be able to actually reach those people effectively? Another key area you want to highlight in your business plan for grant funders is who's on the team. So one of the things when funders are evaluating your business plan and your grant applications, they're looking at, okay, so you've got this problem, you've got this idea, you've got this maybe technology involved, developed. So how are you going to action that? How are you going to make it come to life and execute on your development or your business development? So it's really important to explain who are the key people and what are their expertise areas that can help you actualize moving this business forward. Who's involved in the team? Are they working full-time, part-time? And you want to talk a little bit about their bios and as it relates to their expertise in the field. You can also add in things like advisors, accelerators that you've been in to add influence into the knowledge that you've gained to kind of grow your business, and include investors and their role in your business, because again, those are added value opportunities. Even if you have a small team, there may be advisors that could have influence in helping you move forward. Important to clearly articulate whether it's products and services you have now or ones that you're planning to build with the grant funding that you're going after. You want to describe what they are, what your pricing model is, how you're going to sell in the market, and clearly articulate the buyer you have in mind for those products and services. But clearly lay out what they are so that they know you've thought through how you're going to use the business and how you're going to actually make money in this business. And referencing again back to the market, understanding your market, I want you to start thinking about your business like your primary and secondary market. So your primary market is the first customer. You're going to take your product to commercialization and you're going to bring it to market and you're going to start selling to a specific market. So clearly define who it is, what the size of it is, how they think, and then how, what the data is to support that market. So when government funders are looking at your business plan, they're wondering, have you done your research to understand, is there a big enough market for what you're trying to do? Because grant funders are typically looking to support scalable businesses, not mom and pop shop businesses. So we really suggest that you do some research. So for example, if your business is real estate investors in Ontario, Google the size of that market, get some stats. There's lots of statistics, whether it's Stats Canada or some stats organizations globally. When you Google it, you can usually find some data to support and explore where that market is if you don't already have that information. But data and being able to back up that information is something important that funders want to see you've done your research. And then is there a secondary market for your product? So some people have, they may be targeting real estate investors, and then they may be developers of real estate, maybe a secondary market that they could target as well. Again, find the stats to explain what that market size is, because basically what funders are looking for is do you have a really clear picture of the market size, and what you intend to pursue? So if it's $1 billion market and you're a small business, you may want to tap into 1 to 5% of that market to communicate how you're going to approach and grow that. And again, it's designed to how it's tied to the financials and the projections in your business as well. And then also explain in these markets, if you plan to grow internationally, this always adds value and exponentially expands the size. Competitive analysis is another thing that's really important. So a lot of times when funders are looking at your business plan, they are looking to see, do you understand who you're competing against to sell your product? So sometimes people will say, hey, our product's innovative. We don't have competitors. And that's a red mark, a red flag. All people have competitors. So all people, whether they're using your product, whether your innovative product is in the market yet or not, people are spending money on something. And you're taking people from spending money on that something to spend it on your product. So identify who those people might be, even if it's a simple technology they're using and yours is more advanced. Just list 2 or 3 of those people and explain in detail what they do and who what market they're serving and what you're doing differently with each of those competitors. And remember, it can't just be price that's different, because your competitor can shoot you out of the market very quickly by adjusting their price and cutting you out of the piece of the pie that you're trying to capture. So yeah, explain what the competitive advantages that you have. And then another thing that really helps visually sell advisors and funders who are reviewing is a competitive analysis chart. So there's a really cool one. I've seen a lot of them out there. You can use whatever works for you. But there's a chart that has a visual where there's your name and then 3 other competitors, and then 4 or 5 categories of what separates, what's the different value add for the products. And then in the chart, you show that you have 5 of the check marks. Your competitors might have 2 or 3. And so that is an instant visual for people to hone in on exactly what separates you from everybody else as well. Another thing that's really important, again, you're de-risking when you're writing grants and writing business plans for grant funders. They want to know that you really understand how you're going to move this forward. Even if you're just developing your technology, you need to have an understanding of how you're going to market and sell into the marketplace. So there's many things that you can include in your marketing plan. Important to go into detail about how you do it, how you plan to do it, what's your budget, what channels you're going to use, who's going to oversee the marketing, etc. Another thing that's really important to include is your SWOT analysis. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Again, why this is important for funders is they're looking at to see, do you understand what your strengths are, what the weaknesses are, and where the threats may be, and how you're going to address that. So they want to make sure that you've really thought through your business in this space. And then finally, just create that full action plan of who's going to manage it, who's the team, what are the activities, and the channels you're going to use to kind of reach your audience. One of the extra things that you want to start to include in your business plan are the impacts. So about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, the government started saying, hey, we need to start diversifying who gets the money that we're working on. We need to ensure that we're reaching different sectors. And so impact in different areas matters when you're writing grant applications, and even including it in your business plan. So the first one is economic impact. Number 1 to the government is job creation. Number 2 is the revenues. And then how else, IP could be another economic impact. And then how you're going to maybe impact your industry. Are you going to take it across Canada? Are you going global? What is the reach that you have? It could be describing attracting investors as well as an economic impact. So there's many ways to explore how you're going to have an impact on the economy as a result of the business that you're bringing to market. Another big area that's popular, and again, the last few years, our federal government's budget has been around clean technology and sustainability and environment. And so it's important, if that has a role in your business, please explain what those things are that your innovation and your business bringing to the market will have an impact in that space. And the last one that's really important for every business to include is diversity. What's your diversity plan? Do you plan to hire people from a diverse populations that represent all of Canada? Do you have policies and procedures in place to ensure diversity is followed and supported? Is your marketing respectful of diversity? There's so many different things that you can hire in terms of even your hiring practices, how you hire with unbiased ways. There's so many different things that you can explain, but really start to think about how diversity plays a role in your business, because government funders are looking for that. In some of the grant applications, they may ask you for your financials. This is not a financial diagram, but just wanted to represent what's important when you're sharing your financials. Most of the grant funding that you apply for has a matched amount. So one of the things the funders want to see is what money have you invested in your business already? And do you have the money to support grants? Because most grants that you apply for require you to pay for the costs up front, and you're reimbursed a certain amount or certain percentage. So they want to make sure that do you have the money in your bank account to be able to cover those costs and carry those costs. They're also looking at, is the way you're spending money in your business make sense? And so they're looking at how you plan to do this. And again, for the startup companies, they often say, well, I don't need financials because we're not really making any money. But yes, you do need financials, even as a startup. What the government's looking for, even if it's a shareholder loan, you're putting money into the company to be able to get it off the ground. They want to know where you're spending that money and what money you've invested to get it off the ground. In your projections, if it's required in grant application, as a supporting doc, you want to speak to how you're scaling, because the government grants, for the most part, are not to support mom and pop shop ideas. They're looking for scalable business ideas that can give them a return on investment of their money. And so they want to know that you're creating those large number of jobs, that you've got revenue projections that are strong. If you're going global, that's an added value. You know, all those kinds of things are really, really important. So they're looking to review your numbers. Number one, to see your numbers make sense. You know, so for example, if in year one you have 490,000 and then year two, you say you're going to make $2 million, they want to know, okay, so why the leap between 1 and 2? And this is where key assumptions come in. So let's say, for example, you're working with a client who helps you get to that 490,000 currently, but the pilot that you're doing with one of their locations means, and if it's successful, you're going to be able to get into 500 locations and duplicate what you're doing. And so you want to add those kinds of things if you've got high numbers that kind of look like a red flag to a grant funder. You want to be able to explain, what are those key assumptions? Why did your revenues jump that? Why do you expect your revenues to jump so much? If you have certain things in your hiring practices, what you're looking to hire and the number of jobs, just add them in as key assumptions based on the dollar volumes we anticipate collecting. We assume that these are the kinds of jobs that we'll be able to create as a result of that expansion. So just give some key assumptions to the numbers if they have some interesting patterns that you've created in your projections. Again, in the projections, make sure you have the projected expenses, the projected revenues, and the projected profit that you plan to capture. Another thing I just want to focus on is R&D funding, because it's a little bit of a different pitch that you're having when you're creating your business plan. What's most important is most R&D funding is tied to being able to identify what is the innovation you're creating, and can you secure intellectual property for the innovation you're creating. And so governments are wanting to know that. So really be clear in communicating what that is. Most grant funding has what's called, in the R&D space, has what's called a technology readiness level. And so you need to communicate in your business plan where you're at in that technology readiness level, so it aligns with your grant applications and what you're doing. Another thing that's really important that many people often miss out is explaining the technical development. What's in our minimal viable product, our MVP? Explain how you got there. Explain the technical development, because a lot of the funding organizations and advisors in this space often have engineering backgrounds, and they're not just looking for the business idea in terms of how you're going to bring it to market. They want to see, does the way you're developing the technology make sense? So they're interested in seeing what that looks like. So be clear in terms of spelling out how you've built your technology and what's left to build on the runway. They're looking for, have you figured out your product market fit? Have you done customer research? Again, this could be a stopping point in terms of moving forward on a grant, because they want to know that you've done some research, you've talked to your customers, how you've done that. It could be through surveys, it could be that you're in the industry already, and you've worked with hundreds of companies, all those kinds of things really matter to understand. It's not just a great idea, but you figured out your customer has a need for what you're doing. Be clear on your funding roadmap. Be able to explain how you plan to move your technology and development forward and how you plan to support it. Understanding the risks. So most companies, when they're developing risk is another thing that R&D funding or advisors in the government are looking for, because most of the R&D funding is to help you de-risk the innovation. And so you need to understand what are the risks in our technology, in our business, and how do we mitigate those risks. So the fact that you're thinking through these are the possible risks that we could entertain as we're developing our technology, and then here's the plans we have to de-risk that if that occurs. An important area as well. You may want to add, as I mentioned earlier, an R&D section to your business plan, because as you grow and scale, you often find that, you may get version 1 completed and then a whole nother version, maybe some new functionalities or some new technology based on the applications and using your technology and your business with your clients. You find there's another R&D project. So you want to add a section related to ongoing R&D. That way you can kind of fill in some of the new things that you're doing without having to redo your whole business plan for funding. Really important to include your plan about hiring, and whether you're hiring employees, whether you're hiring contractors. Again, one of the #1 metrics that government funders are looking for is jobs created, right? And so an important element to think about including in your business plan. They want to look to make sure that you have matched capital for the grants, much like I spoke to in the financials. They're looking for the money, but you need to have the percentage. It could be 10%, it could be 25%, it could be 50%, it could be 75%, whatever it is. They want to make sure that you have that ability to complete the project and move it forward while you're waiting to get reimbursed. And then supporting docs are very important. So this is like the extra icing on the cake, right? It's showing, here's some extra information for you to be able to see who we are and what we're doing. Visuals are really important as well. You got to think about when you're sending in, for the most part, R&D funding grants, you're pretty much sending in information to a committee who's never met you, and they may never even talk to you about the grant application. So the more detail and visuals that you can share with them to show the value of what you're doing is important. And keep in mind, when you're applying for IND, the company docs that you're providing for the application have to be for the company who holds the IP. So if you have 2 or 3 companies in a group and you're saying, yeah, my main company makes all this money, but we're starting this new company and we're creating IP in the new company, you wouldn't use the supporting company docs from your company that's making the money, because it's unless they own the IP. So it's just a really important thing to keep about, that all the docs have to surround the company that holds the IP. I'm just giving you here a suggestion of what you may want to think about when you're sharing the roadmap. This is not, just a sample idea. The main thing that you want to do when you're communicating to grant funders is a visual around your roadmap. And most often in R&D space in particular, you're talking about the development plan. So here we are at our tier of technology readiness 3, and here's how we're going to bring this technology to commercialization and the timeline that we plan to do that in. What are the steps in the roadmap that we need to overcome to kind of bring it to commercialization? What kind of funding do we need along the way? And then how we plan to generate revenue along the way as well. Again, your roadmap doesn't have to include all these areas, but the most important is that development plan and how you plan to get there and how you plan to fund it. The last thing I want to highlight is ChatGPT. We see a lot of this happening today, and I'm going to caution people in writing their business plans using ChatGPT. You may want to use it to frame out your business plan, but I can sniff those a mile away, and so can grant funders. I've seen some really bad versions of it, and people think, well, they've used ChatGPT to get the general gist, and their business plan is done, right? Because it takes work. And it's not good enough, right? ChatGPT is a great tool, but it doesn't give enough detail and specifics around what you're doing. And so I really encourage to people, you can use it as a guide, but really include written in details of the value of your business, of your business, how you're doing, and don't make it generic. And another thing that I would recommend is have someone on your team or someone an advisor, an investor, to read it to make sure that it fully shares your value and you have the metrics to correctly represent what you're doing and what sets you apart. Thanks for your time. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We do have kind of a template for preparing a business plan. If you want a copy, just reach out to us and let us know. And then there's information on reaching out to share information about getting some help if you need it in the process of preparing your business plan or in helping you with grants. Thanks for your time, and I wish you much success in preparing your plans.